Funding for Overheard with Evan Smith is provided in part by Hilco Partners, Texas Government Affairs Consultancy, and its global healthcare consulting business unit, Hilco Health, and by the Matson McHale Foundation in support of public television, and also by MFI Foundation, improving the quality of life within our community, and also by the Alice Kleberg Reynolds Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
I'm Evan Smith. He's a celebrated academic, an acclaimed author, and an energetic activist whose great cause is rights and freedoms in the digital sphere. But he's also increasingly an advocate for transparency and accountability in institutions, and for the quaint notion of the public trust. He's Lawrence Lessig. This is Overheard.
Is that a vote you'd like to have back now? Because you're a judge or a justice in your case doesn't mean that you're free of personal opinions about them.
You have a dimmer view of him than you have of presidents past.
So when they take your name in vain, you just laugh it off.
For the larger issue, though, in your mind, is that it's not about whether there ought to be a death penalty, but whether the death penalty as administered is fair. Lawrence Lessig, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Very nice to see you.
It's great to see you.
Let me go broad with the first question
Okay.
here and ask you whether the public good is a non-starter conceptually these days. I mean, obviously it's a real thing. It's a defined term of economics. We know there's such thing as a public good, but is it possible to work for the public good or to believe in the public good in a society like ours today?
I actually think that the society has radically different views about what the public good is, and that we shouldn't try to pretend that we're all the same.
Right.
I think people have very different political commitments, and those differences are motivated by principles that are different. I think the most we can hope for in a democracy is a process that we trust, that we can have faith will deliver the victors a chance to govern,
right,
and deliver the opposition a chance to kick out the victors.
Well, if it's the process we're hoping for, then we're screwed.
That
right?
might be true.
Yeah.
But I think that's the thing we need to focus on. We need to give people a reason to believe that it's integrity in the system that's guiding the government one way or the other, so that they have a reason to fight to change
right.
the government from being one or the other.
You don't object to somebody having a diametrically opposed view of what the public good is from your view?
No, I think that's an obligation for me to try to persuade them.
Right. That's democracy.
That's
right?
democracy.
Right, and that's freedom.
Exactly.
Yeah. But the problem is that the process that we all employ to get us there is really not working, or has not worked for some time.
Right. I mean, the fundamental problem in my view is the vast majority of Americans, we did a poll in January, 75% of Americans believe money buys results in Congress. This is the most crassly framed question that we've ever asked. Does money buy results in Congress? If you asked a little bit more subtly, the numbers would be in the 80s and the 90s. But okay, take the most crass view. 3/4 of Americans believe that. What does that do? It leaves most of those 3/4, 90% of those 3/4, to say, why should I waste my time? Right. So even if it's not true, because of course the political scientists are all sort of antsy about whether they can actually prove that money is driving results. So forget that political science debate. Even if it's not true, the mere fact we believe it leads us to disengage from politics, leaving politics
right.
to the crazy extremists on both the left and the right.
So people don't vote, people don't organize in their communities, and
right.
people don't run for office to clean up a system that they think can't be cleaned up.
Right, exactly right. So we produce extraordinary apathy and cynicism about our system, and that feeds the corruption of the system.
So the times that I or you or other people say, you know, there's Fox World and there's MSNBC World, and they only represent a few percent of the on either side of the deal, but the rest of us in the middle get shouted out by those people, shouted down by those people. It's really our fault, not their fault, because we're allowing a system to perpetuate or persist that we know is not working.
I think that's right. Yeah. Now, I think
it's very depressing.
It's depressing, but I think we need to be realistic about it. I mean, you've just said a point that most people don't realize. America is not polarized. The politically active class of America
right.
is polarized.
Right.
But the vast majority of Americans are right bell curve, a little bit more to the left than most people think, but right bell curve in the middle. And they rationally want to have nothing to do with politics, because
right.
politics doesn't make sense, and it is corrupted by this kind of
fundamentally
influence.
Unappealing.
That's exactly right. So they
right.
don't engage.
But you understand that becomes self-fulfilling.
Yeah.
Because if you don't engage, then it never fixes itself, and if it doesn't fix itself, then you don't engage.
Right.
Right.
So this is why
it's getting really depressing now.
Yeah, but I think there's reasons for hope, and it's in places that I think those of us on the left are least likely to look. You know, I think the reasons for hope are movements of ordinary citizens who are taking seriously an obligation to try to take over the government and change it. Now,
sounds like the Tea Party.
It is. It's also the Coffee Party. The
right.
Tea Party is a much bigger presence. The Coffee Party is not as politically identified as the Tea Party, but both of them are grassroots movements that are trying to educate themselves and spread the word about the need for fundamental change and to bring it about. And the most astonishing thing of the last 2 years is that Barack Obama is elected as the reform candidate, but most Americans think reform is now coming from the right. And I think there's a series of places where this relatively small, it's 20-some% of the American public who say that they're Tea Party members. I mean, it's huge because it's a 2-year-old party, but it's not, the majority. But this freshman class has been able to push real reform into the system. They have values I don't agree with, and many of them I would disagree with, but the idea that they want to hold the government accountable and to change it, I think is something that all of us have got to begin to embrace.
But the intellectual critique of the Tea Party, and specifically of those people who took over Congress and in Texas, where we sit today, where a number of Tea Party candidates were elected to the Texas legislature, is campaigning is easy and governing is hard.
That's right.
It's easy to talk about cutting government. It's hard once you get in and discover how difficult it is to cut specific programs, and you become the problem that you came to solve.
Absolutely.
I remember Rand Paul getting elected in Kentucky as a Tea Party candidate, and before he was even sworn in, said, oh, earmarks, maybe not that bad after all.
Yeah, well, but he in the end supported the ban.
Right.
So